One of Hollywood's most down-to-earth stars, Keanu Reeves, was in search of a peaceful home, far from ostentation. However, Veronica, the arrogant realtor showing him an ultra-luxurious mansion, belittled Keanu's simple style and his questions focusing on the house's technical details, labeling him not the client for this house. When Veronica learned who Keanu actually was and why he wanted that house, she was in for the biggest shock of her life. This story will make you question what true wealth is. Keanu Reeves that morning was driving his modest rented sedan along the wide, palm-lined boulevards of Beverly Hills, with only one thought in his mind: tranquility. After months of a mentally and physically exhausting film shoot, he was now seeking a sanctuary where he could retreat into himself, away from the artificial glitter of spotlights and red carpets, a place where he could connect with nature. This quest had brought him to the doors of Prestige Homes International, one of the city's most prestigious real estate offices. In his preliminary meeting with the office's experienced manager, Mr. Maxwell Thornton, he had clearly stated his requirements: a home away from ostentation, functional, built with quality materials, and most importantly, a place where he could protect his privacy and be in touch with nature. And he had one more request from Mr. Thornton. His identity was to be kept strictly confidential. "Mr. Thornton," he had said in his deep, calm voice, "when people know who I am, it becomes impossible for me to have a genuine experience. Please, I'd prefer to be referred to only as Mr. K during this process. I'd also prefer the consultant showing the house not to be informed about this." Mr. Thornton had respectfully agreed to Keanu's unusual but understandable request and promised complete discretion. Would this veil of secrecy help Keanu find the genuine experience he was looking for, or would it open unexpected new doors? A few days later, the big day had arrived. Keanu set out to see the mansion that Mr. Thornton had described as exactly what you're looking for, a property perched on a lush green hill with Pacific views. As usual, he wore understated but quality clothing: a dark cashmere sweater, comfortable fit jeans, and on his feet, the slightly worn but characterful boots he had worn for years, now almost synonymous with him. His hair fell to his shoulders, and a newly growing beard added a thoughtful expression to his face. The car he was driving was also like a sparrow next to the latest model sports cars and giant SUVs in this area. Clean but unassuming, a sedan a few years old, it was exactly as he wanted, as far away from attracting attention as possible. When he arrived at the mansion's enormous wrought-iron gates, he saw the person waiting for him. A woman in her mid-30s, wearing an expensive designer dress that fit her perfectly, stiletto heels, and holding the latest model tablet, her blonde hair expertly coiffed. This was Veronica Croft, one of Prestige Homes International's most successful, most ambitious, and perhaps most arrogant real estate consultants. When Veronica scanned Keanu's car and the modest appearance of Mr. K, as he stepped out, the professional smile on her face momentarily froze, her eyebrows knitting slightly. Manager Mr. Thornton had said this client was very special and keen on privacy, but the special client profile in Veronica's mind didn't quite match the man standing before her. This man lacked that multi-million-dollar buyer aura she expected. Was this a mistake? Or was Mr. Thornton playing one of his strange social experiments again? As these questions raced through Veronica's mind, she plastered that artificial bright smile back on her face. "Mr. K, I presume," Veronica said, her voice sweet but with an ill-concealed tone of condescension. She quickly scanned Keanu from head to toe, those old boots, that ordinary sweater. "Are we sure this man has the money to buy this house?" she thought. This first encounter had already formed a judgment in Veronica's mind, but there was something she didn't know. The ordinary man standing before her possessed a fortune capable of buying not only that house, but perhaps the entire street. And more importantly, he was an observer capable of reading the finest nuances of the human spirit. Every mimic, every insinuating word Veronica uttered at that moment was being noted down one by one in Keanu's mind. This experiment was about to become much more interesting than he had anticipated. Would the dusty truths behind this golden gleam be enough to shatter Veronica's polished mask? And would Keanu find the peaceful haven he was searching for? Or would he crash against this wall of arrogance and turn back? The answer to these questions lay hidden behind the doors of that massive mansion. Veronica Croft, after a final glance at her stylish tablet, turned to Keanu with that professional yet distant smile and said, "Please, Mr. K, let me show you in." The slight mockery in her tone did not escape Keanu's notice. It was as if she were saying, "You'll only ever see this house in your dreams, but since you're here, let me give you a tour to feast your eyes." Keanu followed her without a word. The massive carved wooden door opened silently with a smart system operated by Veronica's fingerprint, leading them into a breathtaking entrance hall. The hall resembled a small palace. The floors were Italian marble, its veins gleaming like gold. The ceiling was so high, it made one feel as if in a cathedral, and from its center hung a giant chandelier made of Venetian crystals, resembling a modern work of art. Original paintings by famous artists adorned the walls, and every corner was decorated with antique sculptures and rare plants. The air was filled with a heady yet artificial scent, a mixture of freshly cut lilies and an expensive room fragrance. Our entrance hall, as you can see, is designed to make an immediate impact on your guests, Veronica began, her voice echoing. She gestured grandly towards the salon. This is a space generally used for very exclusive receptions and distinguished gatherings. Of course, that entirely depends on the caliber of your social circle. As she said this last sentence, she didn't fail to cast a fleeting, condescending glance at Keanu, as if she doubted he could have any high-caliber guests. Keanu paid no heed to Veronica's barbed insinuations. He calmly examined his surroundings, committing every detail to memory. What interested him were not the gilded ornaments or giant chandeliers. He was trying to understand the spirit, the energy of the place. Could this house truly be the peaceful sanctuary he was looking for? Or was it just another gilded cage? These questions whirled in his mind. They moved into the living room. It was surrounded by floor-to-ceiling glass walls, offering a magnificent view of the Pacific Ocean and lush green hills. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating the space. "These panoramic windows," Veronica continued, her voice filled with a theatrical enthusiasm, "are made of high-quality tempered glass. Such features are what our sophisticated clients value most, as they create a seamless connection between indoor and outdoor spaces." She paused, slightly disappointed when she didn't see the expected expression of awe on Keanu's face. Keanu was calmly surveying the view, but wasn't giving that anticipated wow reaction. Instead, Keanu walked towards the glass walls, lightly touching the surface of the glass with his fingertips. "What about the acoustic insulation?" he asked, his voice thoughtful. "Such large glass surfaces can often be a weak point in terms of soundproofing, especially in stormy weather. How much of the wind's howl is felt inside?" Veronica was momentarily flustered by this unexpected technical question. The professional smile on her face vanished for an instant. She was used to her clients asking questions like, "How impressive is the view?" or "Is it large enough for parties?" What on earth was acoustic insulation? Of course it's effective," she stammered, quickly trying to regain her composure. The initial enthusiasm in her voice had faded, replaced by a slight irritation. "This property was not designed for clients concerned with technical details, Mr. K. This is more for those who appreciate luxury, design, and the lifestyle it offers." With these words, she had once again placed Keanu in the doesn't understand client category. They proceeded to the kitchen area. The kitchen was truly a chef's dream, with state-of-the-art built-in appliances, a massive island counter, and custom-designed cabinets. "Our kitchen countertops are covered with Carrara marble, one of the most expensive marbles in the world," Veronica boasted, trying to regain control. "It's perfect for impressing your guests during dinners or social events. Do you host many gatherings, Mr. K?" This question felt more like a test of Keanu's social status than genuine curiosity. Keanu walked over to the counter, running his fingers over the cool surface of the marble. "It's beautiful," he said, "but Carrara marble is quite porous. What kind of treatment has been applied to prevent stains? And the cabinets, do they have a soft-close system? It might seem like a small detail, but it makes a big difference in daily use." Veronica took a deep breath. Her patience was wearing thin. Why was this man constantly interested in such annoying, insignificant details? Why wasn't he focusing on the grandeur of the house, the luxury it offered? "As I said," she retorted, trying to hide the tension in her voice. "This is a high-end property. All materials have been specially treated to ensure durability. I'm sure such things wouldn't pose a problem for experienced homeowners." These last words were another passive-aggressive jab at Keanu. They went upstairs. Veronica's impatience was now too obvious to hide. She rolled her eyes at Keanu's every pause, every inspection, sighing with exasperation. When they reached the master suite, Veronica opened the doors with a dramatic flourish. "And here is our master suite," she announced with feigned admiration. "This is a space that truly represents what it means to live with class." She particularly emphasized the last words. "Some of my clients love showing this room to their friends, but perhaps that's not something you do, right?" Keanu ignored this insinuating comment. He walked to the large windows. The room overlooked a well-kept backyard filled with fruit trees and an infinity pool. For the first time that day, a faint smile appeared on his face. "This is exactly what I was looking for," he murmured, "a space connected to nature." Veronica stared at him in amazement. She couldn't understand how this man could be so self-assured yet have such simple tastes. He has no idea what he's getting into, she thought. But what she didn't know was that the man standing before her was Keanu Reeves, and that every condescending gesture Veronica displayed at that moment was about to become the biggest mistake of her career. Was there a pre-storm silence behind Keanu's calmness, or was it just the wisdom of accepting things as they are? Veronica had no answer to these questions because she believed only what she saw and belittled the depths she couldn't perceive. Those glass walls reflected not only a magnificent view, but also cracking masks and a bitter truth about to be revealed. They were standing on the magnificent terrace on the upper floor of the mansion. The sun had created a golden bridge over the Pacific Ocean, painting the lush green hills of Beverly Hills with a gentle light. Veronica was determined to use this view as her final trump card. Perhaps the only thing that could impress this simple man was this breathtaking ostentation. "This is it," Veronica said, spreading her arms wide and infusing her voice with a tone of admiration. "This terrace offers one of the most unique views in the city. This is one of the features our elite clients value most. Can you imagine hosting unforgettable parties here with your important friends, or relaxing with a drink in hand against this view after a long day, Mr. K?" As she asked the question, she cast an insinuating glance at Keanu, as if she didn't believe he could have important friends or experience such relaxing moments. Keanu leaned on the railing, gazing towards the horizon for a while. His face still bore that calm, thoughtful expression. "Yes, it's a beautiful view," he said, his voice soft as ever. "But for me, the most important thing is how comfortable and functional a space is for daily life. Such views, if there's no peace inside, lose their meaning after a while." Veronica sighed, almost audibly. It was impossible to understand this man. She was tired of his simple comments, his practical concerns. She wanted to end the tour as soon as possible and get rid of this waste of time. Unable to bear it any longer, she decided to be direct. "Look, Mr. K," she said, the feigned politeness in her voice gone, replaced by a cold, distant professionalism. "I'll be honest. Normally our clients who are genuinely interested in properties at this level come prepared to close the deal. I don't know what your experience is with homes like this, but this place is designed for those who understand and value exclusivity. Are you sure you're in the right place?" This last sentence was an insult, elegantly packaged. The cold smile on her face barely concealed her hostility. Keanu slowly turned towards her. His face still wore that calm, serene expression. He seemed unaffected by Veronica's overtly derogatory words. "I'm sure, Miss Veronica," he said, with a slight emphasis in his voice. "But before making an investment, it's always good to be sure whether that investment is truly worth it, isn't it?" That slight emphasis on the word investment somehow made Veronica uneasy for a moment. There was something under this man's calmness that she couldn't quite grasp. When they finally returned to the ground floor, Veronica breathed a sigh of relief. She was now completely convinced that this man was not a serious buyer. She had already begun to formulate in her mind how she would report to manager Mr. Thornton that the client was just a curious time waster. But just then, Keanu did something that caught her completely off guard. "I'd like to see the contract and speak with your manager before making any decisions," he said, in an extremely calm voice. Veronica froze for a moment. The contract? Speak with the manager? Was this man serious? Serious, she thought. She forced a smile onto her face. Of course, Mr. K, she stammered. Let me call the manager right away so you can discuss the details. But I must point out that this is a first-class property, and the negotiation process requires a strong commitment. I hope you are aware of that. Keanu simply nodded. Veronica, now visibly uncomfortable, took out her phone and called the manager. Keanu's self-assured demeanor was beginning to make her uneasy, but she still had no idea what was about to happen to her. She didn't know that a big storm was about to break behind her arrogant mask. Those few minutes it took for the manager to walk from his office to the salon would feel like an eternity for Veronica. And when that door opened, not only the manager, but also a bitter truth would walk in. The Mr. Maxwell Thornton, whom Veronica had called with trembling fingers, entered the mansion's grand salon a few minutes later with his usual confident and authoritative strides. His face wore the professional look of interest and courtesy shown to an important client. However, the moment he saw Keanu Reeves, or the plainly dressed man who was still Mr. K, to him, his expression changed instantly. His eyes widened in surprise, and a sincere, warm smile appeared on his lips. "Mr. Reeves," Mr. Thornton exclaimed, his voice conveying both surprise and great respect. "What a pleasure to see you again. I hope the property has met your expectations." With those two words from her manager, "Mr. Reeves," Veronica froze on the spot. She felt the blood drain from her face, her head spin. Reeves? Which Reeves? Could it be him? Was the ordinary man standing before her, the man she had belittled, scorned, and almost mocked for hours, the legendary Keanu Reeves, one of Hollywood's biggest stars, beloved by millions? Her eyes turned to Keanu in horror. At that moment, the calm smile on Keanu's face, those thoughtful gazes, suddenly took on a different meaning. That simplicity was not poverty or ignorance, but on the contrary, great humility and wisdom. Those shabby clothes were not a lack of taste, but an escape from the artificiality of fame and ostentation. Those technical questions were not pedantry, but a reflection of genuine interest and wisdom. I didn't know," Veronica stammered, her voice trembling, not knowing what to say or do. At that moment, she felt her entire career, her entire reputation, shattered like glass before her eyes. She had not only lost a potential sale, but had also shown unforgivable disrespect to one of Hollywood's most respected and beloved figures. Keanu, seeing Veronica's distraught state, turned to her again with that gentle smile. "You didn't need to know who I was to treat me with respect, Miss Veronica," he said, his voice calm, but every word was like a lesson. The momentary silence in the salon was broken by Mr. Thornton clearing his throat. The manager's face bore an expression of clear disappointment and anger towards Veronica. The other real estate office employees, two interns, Mark and Susan, who were present at the house, and a photographer taking pictures of the property, had noticed what was happening from a distance and were now watching this strange scene with curious and somewhat apprehensive gazes. Whispers had already begun. Keanu turned to Mr. Thornton. "Before we discuss any contract," he said, his voice still in that calm tone but with a determination within, "I'd like to talk a bit about how future potential clients, whoever they may be, can receive fairer and more respectful treatment." Veronica felt her face burn as if on fire. She understood that she had not only lost a major sales opportunity, but also all her professional credibility. And at that moment, she realized she was facing a lesson she would never forget for the rest of her life. The walls of that luxurious mansion had now transformed into a shrine of shame and regret for her. Keanu Reeves's calm and wise demeanor had shattered all of Veronica's artificial self-confidence, all her arrogant masks, in an instant. This was a bitter awakening, but perhaps it was exactly what she needed. Inside the luxurious house, the atmosphere had changed drastically after the revelation that the casually dressed man was none other than Keanu Reeves. The room was filled with tension. Veronica felt as though the air around her had grown heavy. Her heart was racing, and the silence between those present in the room was deafening. While Keanu calmly spoke with the real estate manager, Veronica stood frozen in a corner, completely still. The house, once a symbol of power and sophistication for her, now seemed like a stage where her incompetence and arrogance had been laid bare. Other members of the real estate team who were present, including the two interns and the photographer documenting the property for the listing, began to notice what was happening. Curious and, in some cases, reproachful glances were directed toward Veronica. At the center of the room, Keanu and the manager spoke in hushed tones, but it was impossible for the others present not to sense the weight of the conversation. Keanu's calm and polite demeanor contrasted sharply with the visible anxiety of the manager, who was sweating lightly as he listened to the client. "The house is truly impressive," Keanu began with a slight smile. "It's exactly what I've been looking for. But before we proceed with the contract, I'd like to discuss something important." The manager swallowed hard and quickly replied, "Of course, Mr. Reeves, we'd be happy to adjust any details necessary." Keanu cast a brief glance in Veronica's direction. She immediately averted her gaze, pretending to check something on her tablet. "My concern isn't with the house, Mr. Thornton," Keanu continued. "It's with the way people are treated here. I requested discretion because I wanted to be treated like anyone else. And today, I got a very clear idea of how things operate when someone appears to be out of place." The manager blushed with shame. He knew exactly what Keanu was referring to. "I understand, Mr. Reeves," he said, "and I deeply regret any negative experience you've had. I can assure you that this does not reflect the values of our team." As he said this, he shot a reproachful look at Veronica, who pretended not to notice, feeling she was the target of the criticism. Veronica, feeling the weight of the criticism, finally broke the silence. Her voice was hesitant, but she tried to sound confident. "Mr. Reeves, I apologize if I made you feel disrespected. I truly didn't know who you were. If I had known, I would never have." She hesitated, realizing she was about to say something that would make things worse. Keanu raised his hand gently, interrupting her. "You didn't need to know who I am to treat me with respect," he said firmly, yet with a kind tone. "My appearance, the car I drive, the clothes I wear, none of that should determine the value you place on someone." Veronica felt her face grow hot. She knew Keanu was absolutely right, and no excuse could undo what had happened. She looked down at the floor, unable to meet his gaze. The others present in the house exchanged uneasy glances. Mark and Susan, two of the interns, whispered to each other in the corner, while the photographer, who had been adjusting his camera to take shots of the backyard, paused to observe the scene. "This is going to ruin her reputation," Mark murmured. Susan shook her head. "Maybe she needs this to learn. Veronica has always treated people as if they were beneath her. Now she's paying the price." Meanwhile, the manager was trying to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Reeves, I can assure you that we'll take steps to ensure this doesn't happen again. Veronica is an experienced professional, and she will learn from this," he said, attempting to defuse the situation. Keanu, however, turned his attention directly to Veronica. "I hope so, because respect isn't a matter of experience or position. It's something basic, and it should be non-negotiable." Veronica felt as though the ground was opening up beneath her feet. She knew her reputation was on the line, but more than that, she felt the weight of the lesson she was learning. Keanu walked over to the large window overlooking the backyard and gazed at the infinity pool. He stood silently for a few moments, admiring the view. Finally, he turned to the manager and said, "The house is beautiful. I think I'll move forward with the purchase. But I hope this experience serves as an opportunity for reflection, not just for Veronica, but for everyone." The manager nodded, relieved that Keanu was still willing to proceed with the deal. He knew that the star could have easily walked away and publicly exposed what had happened. Keanu then headed toward the door. "I'll wait in the car while you prepare the final documents. Let me know when they're ready." And with that, he left, leaving behind an atmosphere still thick with tension. Veronica remained silent, her mind racing with thoughts of regret and shame. She knew she would never forget that day, and the lesson it had brought. The sound of Keanu's footsteps faded as he exited through the front door, leaving behind a room steeped in awkward silence. Veronica stood frozen in place, her face pale and her eyes fixed on the floor. Her thoughts were chaotic. How did this happen? How didn't I realize? What are people going to say about this? The manager, on the other hand, tried to maintain his composure, though his expression betrayed his discomfort. He knew that despite Keanu's kindness, this incident wouldn't be easily forgotten, and that the responsibility for Veronica's behavior fell squarely on his shoulders. A short while later, the sound of Keanu's car engine starting and then shutting off again brought everyone back to reality. He hadn't left. He was simply waiting patiently while the manager finalized the paperwork. Realizing this, Veronica felt a mix of relief and tension. He still wanted to go through with the deal, which meant the situation wasn't entirely lost. However, she also knew she'd have to face him again. The manager hurriedly reviewed the documents, his hands trembling slightly as he filled out the final details. He was determined not to let any further mistakes happen that day. Veronica, meanwhile, walked to the kitchen counter where a glass of water had been left. She picked it up and took a sip, hoping the cold drink would calm her nerves. But shame was an unrelenting wave, and the water offered little solace. "Veronica, I need to speak with you," the manager said in a serious tone, gesturing for her to follow him to a corner of the room. His tone was firm but measured, likely to avoid adding further embarrassment in front of the other staff. Veronica swallowed hard and followed him, feeling the stares of the other agents and interns on her back. Once they were at a safe distance, the manager crossed his arms and looked at her directly. "I don't even know where to start." "That was unacceptable," he said bluntly. "I trusted you with one of the most important clients we've ever had. And you—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You completely threw it away with your behavior." "I didn't know who he was," Veronica protested, her voice low but full of desperation. "If I had known—" "That's exactly the problem," the manager interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "You didn't need to know who he was. What you did today wasn't just unprofessional, it was a lack of respect for a client who came here to be treated like anyone else." Veronica remained silent. She knew she had no excuse, but hearing it spoken out loud by her boss made the shame even harder to bear. "You're one of the most experienced agents here, Veronica," the manager continued, "and today you showed the exact opposite. I hope you learn from this, because this is your last chance." Veronica felt a lump in her throat but nodded silently. She knew she had no choice. A few minutes later, Keanu was called back into the room to sign the papers. He entered with the same calm demeanor as before, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The manager handed him the documents, quickly explaining the details. As Keanu reviewed them, Veronica remained in the background, watching silently. She desperately wanted to apologize again, but she knew that any words might make things worse. She simply hoped her presence would go unnoticed. Keanu signed the papers and, before handing over the final page to the manager, looked directly at Veronica for a moment. Her heart seemed to stop. He walked over to her, holding the contract in one hand. "Veronica," he began, his voice calm but firm, "it's not easy to admit our mistakes, but it's the only way to grow. I hope you take something positive away from today." Veronica opened her mouth to respond, but then closed it again. She simply nodded, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. Keanu handed the contract to the manager, offered a small warm smile, and then walked out once again,